I'm beaming to you today from Toronto, near the Portage Trail between Lake Ontario and Georgian Bay in south central Canada. The land and watershed we call Toronto has been inhabited and cared for centuries by various Indigenous peoples, including the Mississauga of the Credit River First Nation. This territory is the subject of agreements unfortunately breached by settlers, including the dish with one spoon wampum, a mutual promise to peaceably share and care for the land and resources around the Great Lakes. I'm very grateful to the International Observatory for School Climate and Violence Prevention, which sponsors this webinar series, and to Professor Veronica Lopez, who invited me to give this talk. And thanks to all of you for coming. You're welcome to email to request the PowerPoint file, which is unfortunately rather dense, to get the citations and further information in the notes below each slide. Here's the problem I want to discuss with you today. On one hand, transnational research confirms that when young people experience open and inclusive discussions of conflictual issues in their classrooms, they are significantly more likely than other young people to show both capability and inclination to participate in democratic political dialogue in civil society. On the other hand, lately, my friends and colleagues who teach in various age groups and contexts are finding it more difficult to have thoughtful, educative discussions about contentious questions. Sometimes hostilities and conspiracy theories erupt. A few voices attack and silence others. Sometimes students are afraid to speak up or to voice their questions about issues that feel too hot. The internet is not the entire reason for this problem, but it plays a catalytic role in informing and escalating people's conflict-related learning and their opportunities and willingness to communicate with one another. In my career, I have studied the various ways school education may respond to conflicts, injustice, and violence, and the implications of these choices for schools' contributions to citizenship learning for democracy, justice, and durable peace. But here is an educational puzzle. As sociologist of education Elizabeth McKennedy shows, the entire role of teaching and schooling has been fundamentally challenged by the information circulation culture emerging through digital instant media in recent decades. So many people now have nearly instant access to an enormous quantity of both reliable and unreliable information that may be more up to date than any textbook or curriculum guide. Learners also may prefer internet content to what is taught by their teachers, textbooks, or scientific authorities. So, what subject matter and what capabilities are worth learning and practicing in school? Where can people find reliable information, talk and reflect about difficult issues, and find community in the context of diversity and rapid change? Political polarization and disinformation, abetted by algorithms and big data, erode the ability of citizens to think and learn, to identify anti-democratic behavior, and to act democratically in the context of difference and division. Dr. Clark Chin and his research team explain the democratic citizenship ramifications of the resulting culture of not accepting truth claims. Impediments to reasoning well are exacerbated by contemporary digital trends, such as massive increases in unvetted information available online, the ease of creating and spreading inaccurate and information through digital media, and the partisan fragmentation of media sources. The unchecked spread of information induces skepticism of legitimate information providers and of accurate information. Nevertheless, the idea that truth matters and that some ways of seeking the truth are better than others is crucial for coexisting in a democratic society. Otherwise, people can become more susceptible to political and economic manipulation. Digital media coexist and blend with other forms of communication. Conflict studies and peace-building scholar Lisa Shirk explains, online and offline media reinforce each other. If there is false or deceptive information on social media, this can bleed over to radio or TV and vice versa. Digital technologies can amplify polarization, disinformation, and the discrimination patterns fueling conflict dynamics. The International Fund for Public Interest Media, led by Nobel Peace Prize winning Filipina journalist Maria Ressa, recognizes the risks of these information ecosystems, both for democracy and for the prevention of violent conflicts. Shirk's study reveals social media platforms amplifying polarization, hate, and extremism in virtually every country. Platforms that offer users free access do so in exchange for collecting or extracting private information about users' beliefs and preferences. The profit models guide the design of their platform offerings and the algorithms that run them to engage and maximize users' attention. User engagement translates to greater profit. Communications scholar Victoria Rubin offers a framework for thinking about this problem. Following the epidemiological disease triangle model of intersecting causal factors, the virulent pathogens are falsifications, clickbait, satirical fakes, and other deceptive or misleading news content. The susceptible hosts are information overloaded, time-pressed newsreaders lacking media literacy skills. And the conducive environments are poorly regulated, polluted social media platforms that propagate and encourage the spread of various fakes. Thus, we should not focus entirely on the pathogens circulating distortions and misinformation, or even on media literacy, but also attend to what shapes the information-disinformation environment and what may increase or decrease young people's susceptibility to such manipulation. What kind of education could respond to this so-called post-truth era, when any attempt at seeking or expressing factual information may be contested without recourse to evidence nor attentiveness to the inequitable human relational costs of the corporate-controlled cyber information environment? Scholars Sarit Barzulai and Clark Chin summarize recent research on digital media consequences. They say in many countries, trust in news media has been continuously declining. They find echo chambers, reliance on a closed ecology of information sources that cater to one's own preferences, sentiments, or worldviews. This can undermine the possibility of developing shared knowledge and engaging in public discourse. People's capabilities to find out the truth underlie the capacity for social critique and the ability to stand up to power. Matthew Costello and his research team conducted a large-scale, demographically balanced survey of diverse USA young people, age 15 to 24. They found that for many youth, the internet is the port of entry for information on topics with which they are unfamiliar. And hate mongers, keenly aware of this, use the internet to target and recruit youth. The internet harnesses the power to both dismantle and disseminate hateful narratives. Online activism affords young people a conduit for political organizing and engagement. But of course, the internet can be used just as easily to spread messages of hate and division. Costello's team found that spending more time online, using particular social media sites, and espousing political views online all correlate with increased exposure to online hate. And guess what? Whites are more likely than other racial and ethnic groups to be exposed to online hate frequently. Polarization is a neutral term, but many expressions of extreme intolerance are emerging from the conservative right reactionary end of the spectrum. Circulation of conspiracy theories and propaganda, misogyny and intolerance of gender diversity, racism, anti-Semitism, xenophobia, and rejection of scientific evidence about human carbon consumption causing climate catastrophe create a chilly climate for conversation and learning, and thereby serve the interests of the currently powerful few in a harmful and unsustainable social order. One Jewish high school student here in Toronto, the founder of an anti-bullying initiative called Voice and Action, shared her experience. She wrote, "It feels like Jewish kids are being blamed for a war in the Middle East that we didn't start and that we don't have the authority to end. One of my peers started calling me Jew instead of my name. They thought it would be funny to scream it at me in the hallways. And then another told me, I wish Hitler was back and I wish your whole family had died in a gas chamber." On social media, she writes, "It has been just as bad. My peers share anti-Semitic memes and videos. Many of our peers shun us." Toronto police recently charged 2 males with shooting at the Bayis Hayamushka Elementary School for Jewish girls just this past October 12th, which was Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. It was the second time this year that this school was targeted with gunfire. Another Jewish school was shot at in Montreal. Meanwhile, Arab, Palestinian, and Muslim women and girls, especially those wearing hijab, are often attacked. Humans' intergroup tolerance, unfortunately, is a very old story. But nowadays, fragmented digital media are fanning the flames of hatred at warp speed. Okay, let's think about potential paths towards solution, education, and healing. Only some differences become conflicts, meaning problems, and only some conflicts escalate into inflicting harm or violence. So, conflicts and aggressions may develop out of competing desires or beliefs. However, recognizing, accepting as real, and responding constructively to difference can transform conflicts into occasions for learning and relationship strengthening. In school learning centers, all young people should have opportunities and mentoring to practice investigating, redirecting, and mending both direct participation in fighting and indirect causes of violent conflicts escalation toward harm, such as dehumanizing beliefs and structures of deprivation. UK democratic education scholar Edda Sant and her colleagues articulate the danger, however, if educators respond too cautiously. An overemphasis on rational consensus, they write, dismisses the relevance of disagreement within politics and life. The repression of emotions weakens the possibilities of affective political engagement. It is precisely at this nexus of human feelings and conflicts where citizenship and convivencia education need to dwell now more than ever. What else, besides constructive conflict education, using and criticizing digital media and other sources could possibly even hold young people's attention or strengthen their capability to engage without falling prey to manipulation. When education embraces open-ended uncertainties and continuing disagreements, students might learn to understand conflict as part of the everyday reality of living together in a plural world. In my view, it is neither feasible nor desirable to insulate young people from conflict, which is pervasive on and off the internet. We cannot protect what's left of their innocence by walling them off from the digital culture that surrounds them, even when they don't own phones or are away from screens. Instead, citizenship education should normalize learning to navigate conflict, using the vast power of the internet to find and probe contrasting perspectives on important questions. Conflict and internet navigation education that embraces disagreements and uncertainties may change the usual roles of teachers. It won't be easy, but the alternative is for schooling to become more and more irrelevant and disconnected from the challenges young people confront. Young people are often more fluent in digital navigation than their elders, but teachers could help students to make sense of what they learn, to attach information to powerful ideas in each culture and domain of knowledge, to build toward genuine mutual understanding. Teachers can learn to identify and excavate the curricular subject matter nuggets that can help turn information overload into opportunities for deep understanding and capability. That is, for democratic agency for the real world. Gabriel Villalón, Maria Isabel Toledo, and Alicia Zamorano have discussed their teacher education initiative in Chile for novice teachers to construct classroom pedagogical sequences using a comprehensive planning approach they call curricularizing conflict. This approach guides teachers' curriculum decision-making to develop pedagogical practices to strengthen democracy by constructively addressing the meaningful conflicts that are embedded within or below the prescribed school curriculum. When teachers curricularize conflicts, they find time and make meaning and take educative action with students. Teachers can carefully select conflicting perspectives and emotionally engaging visuals from the internet to guide and facilitate inclusive, constructive inquiry pedagogies and conversations about difficult issues, instead of avoiding what really interests students or being taken by surprise by eruptions of aggression. For instance, restorative justice circle dialogue pedagogies, learned from the wisdom traditions of Indigenous peoples, build norms and relationships for interaction, and circulate a talking piece around a group to invite each person to speak to a facilitator's question if they so choose. This process enacts relatively equal status relationships and inclusion of diverse identities and perspectives, thereby resisting the power relations and assimilation tendencies in schooling. Peacebuilding education scholar Christina Parker Shandell writes, when taken up constructively, safely, and inclusively, conflict brings people together. Restorative justice education circles create space for dialogue about conflicts. Through circle pedagogy, students model and practice how to share while making space for others to share. They practice setting boundaries for honest dialogue perspectives. She concludes, restorative justice in education addresses the causes and consequences of conflicts, not just the symptoms. Nonviolent inclusive relationships in classrooms are necessary, but in my view, not sufficient for building just democratic peace. Classroom education for handling internet-escalated public conflicts can connect each young learner with democratic civil society and governance actors and processes, digital, embodied, and social institutional, guiding young people in how to work together with distant and diverse others to create their future. Scholars Keith Barton and Lee Ching Ho show how education could equip young citizens for the many forms of public engagement that shape civic life. Barton and Ho show teachers how to engage students in pedagogies of non-adversarial problem solving in relation to specific humanized examples of real people in real places, recognizing multiple viewpoints and figuring out how to get their communities and governments to address complex problems such as migration and refugee policies, food security, LGBTQ sexual identity rights, and environmental justice to mitigate catastrophic climate change. Villalon, Toledo, and Zamorano's chapter, mentioned a moment ago, and a chapter by Barton and Ho on the work just cited, are part of a forthcoming book describing teachers' constructive conflict pedagogies on 5 continents. The first book launch, focused on the Latin American chapters, will be presented in early April in Bogota, Colombia, at the Latin American Peace Research Congress, CLAPE. This is a preview of the book's cover art by Canadian batik artist Jan Krillman. As I hope I've made clear by now, digital technology and the internet are not by themselves the nub of the problem. However, young people may want to discuss their experiences in and concerns about online activity for their own sake and to educate their teachers and parents. Here's one book for elementary age readers about the reasons some people generate fake news and why it sometimes fools people, its harmful consequences, and how to distinguish reliable news from fake news. This conflict tree represents democratic peacebuilding education that includes direct nonviolent participation in multiple perspective dialogue about conflict decisions and communities' less visible norms, relationships, mechanisms, and structures to ensure recognition and inclusion across differences and equitable redistribution of resources. That is, collective actions to redress and repair the indirect systemic roots of destructive conflict, enabling the growth and branching out of nonviolent consequences. Note the URL for our draft developing Teaching Resources website at the bottom of the screen. Please check it out and send your recommendations, suggested additions, and other feedback. In sum, education for sustainable, just peace, especially in the age of widespread information manipulation on the internet, is conflict dialogue education, analyzing the content of particular conflicts through the myriad information sources available on the internet and pedagogical processes for learning together about them. It's time to finish up with some questions. Colleagues and I are just beginning a collaborative, transformative, qualitative research project led by Lee Jerome of Middlesex University in England, Zrinka Ristić of Institute for Social Research in Zagreb, Croatia, and myself in Canada. In our rapidly changing world, inundated with instantaneous but unreliable information and images, polarization and reactive politics make it increasingly difficult in many contexts for people to talk and listen together about the problems we care about. Young people's understandings, garnered from globalized digital media as well as their own localities, often remain disconnected from official school curriculum, which continues to emphasize a static, single-story, universalized knowledge base. There is an urgent need for new solutions amid the rise of online hatred, disinformation, conspiracy theories, polarized public debate, direct and structural violence, and disengagement from democratic governance. As co-participants with the researchers in collaborative inquiry and dialogue, students and teachers in each local setting and in dialogue across the transnational settings will express and analyze their relevant online conflict experiences and co-construct new educational projects that facilitate meaningful engagement about difficult and divisive issues and media sources. Our methodology recognizes the value of digital native young people's plural, informal knowledges and engages their agency in finding productive ways forward that will be relevant to them. It also supports teachers who have carried disproportionate responsibility for educational strategies to resist these powerful threats to democracy.
Kathy, 2 more minutes, please.
Perfect. Here are the research questions for our new transnational inquiry to invite your input, discussion, and perhaps future collaboration. I won't read them to me, but you see we're interested in what young people experience, how young people handle things, the same with their teachers, and then the pedagogical strategies that these young people and educators co-construct together for handling difficult issues. To conclude, to help young people learn to navigate the challenging realities of fake news, real hatreds, and systemic as well as direct violence, peacekeeping-oriented protective practices would repress the expression of diversity, creativity, and agency, dampening possibilities for democratic engagement and change. Engaging young people in just peace-building education, in contrast, requires critical attention to indirect as well as directly experienced dimensions of conflict and violence, to reliable and unreliable information and the reasons it's out there, and to contrasting perspectives on the social conflicts that underlie that violence and distortion. This can happen, I believe, in ordinary public schools. Such curriculum practices can widen space for young people with teacher support to develop hope and capabilities for building just, democratic, and durable peace in their own and others' lives. Many thanks to the International Observatory on School Climate and Violence Prevention, to Dr. Veronica Lopez, and to all of you.
Thank you very much, Kathy. And on behalf of the International Observatory of School Climate and Violence Prevention, we are very thankful for your attendance and participation today. We'll be reaching out to all of you who sent your emails. We'd like to invite you to become a member of our observatory, which is free, and you can just sign up on our website. And we would also like to invite you to our 2025 conference on school climate and school violence prevention, which will be held in Chile, in my hometown, Valparaíso. And that will be on October 22nd, 23rd, and 24th of October. So you're truly welcome to come down to Chile. Thank you, Kathy, and thank you, everybody. We'll see you on the next webinar. Ciao, ciao.
Thanks, everybody. Veronica, thanks a million.
Muchas gracias, Kathy. Te pasaste.
You are